Hi, my name is Ryan Slabaugh. I'm the founder of Regeneration. I'm the host of these sessions. We're happy to have Denise Nicol from our team here. She runs our local food as medicine programs. And we have two friends, Keith Berns and Kevin Marshall. To get started, I wanted to frame the conversation as we look to increase nutrition in our food through our soil management practices. Generally, we're focusing on microbial biodiversity as an outcome. And we're learning that we can get to that outcome through growing multiple plant species in an ecosystem. And this can be called a lot of things: companion planting, polycropping, cover cropping. And that's why we have two of our friends today, Keith Berns with Green Cover Seed and Kevin Marshall with Indigo Acres Farm in Edmond, Oklahoma. So, Denise, both Keith and Kevin attended our food and medicine program, right?
They did, yeah. They were both at our programs, and Kevin actually had an opportunity to lead the healthcare professionals and farmers who attended the program around his farm and give them a little tour. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Kevin Marshall. I'm with the owner operator of Indigo Acres. My wife and I started this farm just 10 years ago. We've just completed our 10 seasons. We started out for the purpose of growing food as medicine, believing that food grown properly can be healthy and healing.
And Keith. Keith, I know that you're working with farmers all over the country. Um, Ryan, I know that you all had a call in Washington, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, Keith would jump in the call with us this week actually to work with like hubs in Illinois and Washington, help them get some seeds. So we really appreciated his time. Keith, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me on. So, my name is Keith Berns. My brother Brian and I started Green Cover here. We're in South Central Nebraska. We started Green Cover in 2009, but we've been farming here all of our lives. So, we're doing this right on our own home farm, the farm we grew up on, still a family farm of about 1,800 acres. So, a lot of the things that we talk about, we get to try them out. Good for good or bad, we get to practice them on our own operation. But since we started Green Cover to provide not just cover crop seed, but really to provide diverse cover crop mixes, that's what we feel like we do better than anybody else. That's where we put all of our effort because we have seen the power of diversity on our own farm, our own operation, some of the experiments we did early on to kind of a proof of concept of whether or not we wanted to do this. And so we have designed our whole system around the diverse cover crop mix and not just selling turnips or radishes to somebody. And so we now sell to thousands of customers across all 50 states and are shipping 30 million pounds of seed. But we love working with all sizes of customers, whether they're getting a whole semi load or they're getting a 1 pound package. They're all important to us. And so we have really tried hard to make resources appropriate for all levels of both expertise as well as scale.
That's amazing. I think we were really intrigued when we were out on Kevin's farm to hear about some of the ways that he was using your cover crops, and just wondered if you could kind of get us started by talking about how specialty crop farmers and local food farmers are using cover crop and other ways that they're working with you to build soil health.
Well, like I said, yeah, we've got customers like Kevin who are getting, whether it's a cover crop to go in after you harvest lettuce, to start rebuilding that soil, protect the soil, build nitrogen, or he had beautiful examples of pollinator mixes and the flowering mixes, for both as a border as well as a insectary strip to really draw in the beneficial insects and the pollinators. Wonderful example of that. We when we first started out, we were basically just working with bigger farmers and creating customized mixes just for them. But as we grew and we had all these other sizes of customers coming to us, we soon realized that we couldn't just build a diverse mix for each person because we didn't have the resources, the manpower, the sales team capacity to do that. So we started kind of putting together some base mixes. We call them pre-made mixes of we know that this mix is probably going to fit really good in these scenarios. Well, we're up to like over 40 different pre-made mixes now. So, a small operator, small scale can get on our store, they can get on our website and start searching for what they want. And there's probably something that's going to fit their need really well out of those 40 different choices. And if you're bigger scale, we can still design, custom build a specific mix for you. Or in the case, Ryan, of what we were talking about with kind of the buying groups, we can create a new customized mix for a particular geography, for a particular set of goals. And then what we would love to do is work with groups, and we send it out because logistics is a big cost in any of this. But if we can send it out to one location and then it gets distributed to a hub of farmers in that area, everybody saves a ton of money. We save a ton of work. The customers will all save a bunch of money, and that's what we really like doing. And we like solving problems. And we have over 120 different types of seed. So we love to hear the problem that somebody's having and then work with them to try to figure out what combination of seeds, planted when, terminated, in which way. We like to use cover crops to try to solve problems. And so that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, both with large scale and small scale producers.
I love that. Yeah. What can you talk more about some of those problems that you're helping folks solve? Like, what are some of the things that they come to you with?
Well, when they first come to us, we will, if they just say, well, I need a cover crop, well, the obvious question is, what problem are you trying to solve, or what issue are you trying to do? In our Cover Crops 101 book, I like this picture. Rob Meyer with University of Missouri and Sarah kind of first put this out there, but we like to think of cover crops as kind of the Swiss Army knife concept because they can do so many different things. And so preventing erosion is a huge one. Nobody likes to see their soil wash away. Building nitrogen. Nobody likes to pay for nitrogen. One of the things that we didn't consider initially, but now it's probably one of the biggest things, is how do we both maintain and increase the biological life of the soil? That is such a huge part of making the system work, especially if you're organic or trying to do organic type principles. You have to have the biology. And so how do we build, maintain, support, increase those biological populations? For larger scale operations, supplemental grazing. How do we plant this, graze cattle through it, still maintain our soil benefits, but also recapture some of our income, some of our return on investment is coming from those animals. And so that's a huge part of it as well. But when we go through, there's probably close to 20 different goals. And a goal is essentially either trying to solve a problem or trying to prevent a problem. So there's probably close to 20 of those that we've identified. And then people are always coming up with new ones all the time. And so then we have to think, okay, well, that's probably closest to this. And it's a little bit of an art as well as of a science because, we don't know what all of these interactions are doing under the soil. I think there's going to be better testing mechanisms that will be coming out that will allow us to do a better job of understanding that. But for right now, a lot of it's based on experience, it's based on observation, it's based on feedback that we get from our customers of, this mix did this. And so, okay, well, let's tweak it a little bit because, the flax did really great, but I really didn't see the sunflowers. So then we can kind of modify and adjust that as we move forward.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned that you have over 40 mixes. So clearly it's not as simple as just deciding to plant cover crops and buying a bag that says cover crop. So can you help us understand a little bit more, like if you're um have a market garden and you want to incorporate cover crops, like where do they start? How do they know what kind of mix they should use,
Yeah.
or how do they kind of engage in that process to begin with?
Sure. Well, I referenced, so we just came out with the book, Cover Crops 101. Where do you start? Well, you go to college, you start in the 101 class. And so, this book, you can download the book completely for free at our website if you want to get a PDF of it, or if you want to buy a hard copy, you can do that there too. But it really takes you through the basics because even before you do the cover crop, you have to understand how does it fit into the rest of your system. Because where people get in trouble and they have failures with cover crops or they do an unintentional harm to their cash crop, it's when they don't understand how the cover crop fits into the whole system or they haven't adjusted the rest of their system to fit with the cover crop. So, this book just kind of takes people through the thought process of why do you want to cover crop and when would you do it and how do you plant it and how do you terminate it? Poor termination probably hurts more people more than just about anything else. But we also talk about the biological process in here and how do you select cover crops. So there's a lot of stuff there. And so again, it's a free resource. If you want to just download the PDF, I would encourage people to start there and then just start educating yourself. We've got 400 and some videos on our YouTube channel, and there's thousands of great videos out there that will, and even specifically designed for smaller scale producers. How do you make this work within the confines of, the context of your operation? So we do have a tool on our website that, it's kind of a decision making tool. So you answer a series of questions and then it says, well, these two or three mixes are probably the best choices for you. So then instead of having to look through all 40, you can say, okay, warm season soil builder, warm season grazing mix. Which one do I want to look at? Warm season pollinator. Those are kind of three choices, and then you could go look at each one of those and try to determine specifically which one might fit your needs the best. So, there's no shortcut for educating yourself, and you really shouldn't just rely on someone else to make those decisions for you. You need to put the work and the effort into it so that you understand the system well enough so you can make your own intelligent choices about it. But there's lots of great tools to help you do that.
That is really helpful. I'm curious, just, we work with, as I know you do too, just farmers across the country who are in different climates. Do some of those tools dive into like what cover crops you might choose if you're in a really moist climate versus if you're in a really dry climate? Or is that even a factor in the decision making?
Well, no, it certainly is, and it's not just you can't just look at your overall climate. You have to look at what is your climate during the time that you're going to grow your cover crop, because we use the same cover crops in Texas and Oklahoma, for Kevin and his neighbors as what we use in Montana. It's just at different times of the year, and for a lot of these annual cover crops, that's the beauty of annual cover cropping. We don't have to have something that will be a great fit for you for 120 days. You really just need to have something that's going to be a really good fit for 60 to 75 days, because that's often the time frame that you have between your regular cash cropping. And so we just have to hit something in that window that will match up with your geography and your climate. So, when are you going to freeze? How cold is it going to get? How much rain? So like California, typically a very dry area, but within their cash cropping system, their off season is right now, because they've harvested their almonds, their grapes, their tomatoes, whatever they're growing. But their off season is also when they get all their rain. So California can do a lot of great cover cropping because they're getting their, even though they're very dry, they're getting the rain during the fallow period for their cash crops, and that's a great fit. That's a great fit. We were on with some, Ryan and I had a conversation with some people from the Palouse, the Pacific Northwest. They're exactly the opposite. In their fallow, or their periods between cash cropping, they're incredibly dry. So that's a much more challenging environment to try to make that fit in. So you got to take all those things into consideration. But the same cover crops they can move very broadly geographically because we're hitting very small windows, and we're not trying to take it all the way out to cash, to grain. And it's way easier to get the vegetative growth out of a crop than to get good grain harvest. And so that's a huge benefit for these cover crops. And it makes them very versatile and very adaptable, because we're not trying to get a cash grain harvest. We're looking at what are those roots doing? What's the biology? How is it responding to those roots? And then what are we leaving on top of the soil to protect it?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I've got one more question for you, Keith, and then I want to jump over to
Yeah.
Kevin. Keith, do you know if there are any programs out there to support farmers who are cover cropping on veggie production?
Well, I assume so. Yes, I think that, and again, through NRCS, through equip contracts, things like that. I think there are some now. I don't know if they go all the way down to helping to pay for seed, or if they're helping more for infrastructure type products. And those the states have a lot of flexibility within equip, and so every state's going to be different, and even some counties may have different, they get an allotment, and then they can kind of decide where they want to emphasize on how they spend those equip dollars. So I would start with NRCS because that's a great place to start. Beyond that, get involved in some of these producer groups because I'm not going to know a lot of those specifics of what in Kevin's area of Oklahoma or out in Illinois or things like that. You have to get involved in producer groups because most likely the answer to that question is going to be held by someone within 60 miles of you who is doing something similar. So get plugged in, be part of a grower group, some sort of collective that is, could maybe help you with the marketing, can maybe help you with sourcing some of this cover crop seed, but can definitely help give you information about what programs, what resources are available.
That is super
Denise,
helpful.
I might just add one thing. Yes, if you're listening in the Palouse, that most of that cover cropping program through the Spokane Conservation District is funded through the EPA, actually, which is an interesting through water quality metrics. So yeah, every state varies quite a bit.
Nice. So having those connections, as you mentioned, Keith, is really helpful to really dive into what is available in your
Yeah,
state.
you have to because that's changing all the time. There are literally trillions of dollars of money sitting on the sidelines waiting to be invested when the right opportunity comes up, when the right program comes up, and that's changing fast. And
Mhm.
so no one person is going to be able to stay on top of all that. But if you have a really good group and you have some people from that group that are really keeping their antennae up and listening for these opportunities and then sharing it with everybody, that's hugely valuable.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I want to bring you into the conversation here and talk about, the day-to-day work that you're doing. And really, I guess to get us started, could you share how long you've been cover cropping and just how did you bring cover cropping into your operation?
When we started 10 years ago, our farm was modeled off the book, The Market Gardener by Jean-Martin Fortier. And as you look at that study, he talks about soil health. So we really started focused on soil health from day one. His economic design was to utilize compost. And when we started out, that's how we first started out. We would purchase compost from a local facility and apply it. And as a quick solution to the problem. But in Oklahoma years ago, they passed a law to allow medical marijuana, and that's changed our industry here. The supply and demand of quality compost became problematic in the fact that thousands and thousands of little marijuana farm startups started purchasing marijuana or started buying compost type for their operation. And so the cost went astronomically high. Where I was budgeting $2,000 a year for compost, the cost went to the point where I was budgeting $8,000 a year for compost.
Hmm.
For a small startup farm, that was just not an option for us. So we tried to make compost, and we couldn't make 60 yards of compost on a 1 acre, 1.5 acre problem. So it forced me to kind of look for alternatives. Cover crop was something that we started looking at, and I'd been familiar with it for a long time. So our new plots, we began cover cropping mixes and different things to do soil building, to add organic matter and biological life. And the first thing I learned after 1 year is one of our expansion plots that we cover cropped for one season. We'd taken soil tests of that. We'd also been taking soil tests of our first garden where we were composting. And 3 years of composting, we increased our organic matter from like 1.2 to 2.1. The next garden where we cover crop for only 9 months, we went from 1.2. Within 9 months, we went to 2.9. And that to me said, hey, I can increase my organic matter way faster and also way cheaper. That was probably a couple of 50-pound bags of some mixes that we picked up locally and threw it out there. Didn't really know what we're doing, and but even doing a bad job, we increased our soil content significantly. And that was just the pure dumb luck of medical marijuana getting passed in Oklahoma, and it forced me to find an alternate way to fix my soil. So that's kind of how we got started. Was pure dumb luck.
That's amazing. I appreciate you sharing those details too, and be willing to like pull back the curtain a little bit and share some of the financials too, because I think that's so helpful for others to understand and be willing to have some insight. So thanks for your transparency there. So I know when we are on your farm, you've got high tunnels and you also have open air fields. Are you cover cropping in both of those scenarios?
We try to cover crop everywhere. So we currently have 6 high tunnels. We have 2 large tunnels that we got from the NRCS, which are our, we call them our bread and butter. They're our best products. But we also have 4 cat tunnels from the Farmer Friends, which is a popular system. We took those out of rotation this year. We had some storm damage and we took the plastic down and decided to let that soil rest. And so for those 4 high tunnels, we decided to spend 1 full year of cover cropping, and then this next spring we're going to put the plastic back on and put those back into production. Very excited to see the increased results of that. So within the high tunnels, it's a little bit more challenging because we grow 52 weeks out of the year. And so we have had to still rely a little bit on compost, but anytime I do have an opportunity, we throw in a cover crop mix. Currently, we've got about 5 beds right now that don't have stuff, and I'm not going to plant anything. So we just threw down some cover crop seed. We watered it in and are going to grow in that. Even if it's just a short 6 or 8 weeks, growing anything does add that soil biology more than just letting the soil sit. And so we're doing that. So yeah, we're excited about what we're going to see in our other high tunnels by taking them out of rotation temporarily. We've seen some financial results in one of our outdoor gardens. I think earlier I mentioned our first garden, we initially developed it with just compost, and our other outdoor gardens we developed with cover cropping. At the end of 2023, we decided to take our first garden out of rotation briefly. At the end of the season, we put in from green cover crop seed the winter or cool weather soil building, applied that in the end of September as we finished stuff, grew that all winter, cut it, tarped it, removed it, planted lettuce, which is our #1 cash crop. The results we got were incredible. When we plant a 100-foot bed of lettuce, we expect that the baseline is to get 100 pounds for a 100-foot bed of lettuce. We've been doing really well at 130 pounds per bed, but when we took that one bed temporarily out of production, did a cover crop, replanted lettuce, our first cut, we were averaging 230 pounds of lettuce. Our second cut was 130 pounds of lettuce, which is still above the industry standard. And our third cut, we got 90 pounds of lettuce. So just from a poundage standpoint, you sell that by the pound, that was a financial gain for us. We more than doubled our revenue off that garden just by taking it out of rotation just for a brief season. So cover crops not only increase our organic matter, they increase that biological life that does show an increase in production. So I'm my #1 fan of green cover seed. They take care of us and really help us a lot by providing those mixes that he talked about earlier that make it easy for me to go find a mix, apply it whatever season I'm in. So yeah, we're extremely excited about what cover crops has been doing for us.
That's amazing. It sounds like there's a clear ROI for you too. And you talked about the results that you're seeing in your soil organic matter. What about the crops themselves? Like, do you notice difference in the flavor or resistance to pests, or like, what other benefits are you seeing?
Yeah, it's hard to say on flavor. We've always taken pride in the flavor of our food. So before cover cropping, our stuff tasted good. It still tastes good, but we have seen physical signs. That same garden that we had taken out where we had the lettuce, we also had some bok choy. And my farmhand at the time, Catherine, was harvesting that, and I wasn't paying much attention. She came to me and said, "These are the biggest bok choy and the darkest green, and the bug is down. The bug damage was down." And so it wasn't just lettuce, but yeah, we can see the physical results in other stuff of just healthier looking plants.
Incredible. And what do you do with your cover crop at the end of the season then? Do you terminate or how do you handle that?
So for us, termination is part of the plan. Clearly, the market garden has some challenges with terminating, just because the market garden concept is to plant something, harvest it, plant something else. So we have that quick turnaround. So with that said, we have to be careful about what we plant as a cover crop, that when we terminate it, we want it to break down quickly. If we're using our Jane cedar or paper pot, we need a nice clean bed. So planting rye that might be more fibrous takes a long time to break down. So we kind of have to strategize what we're going to use as a cover crop. But some of the other mixes just break down quicker. So we terminate it usually by flail mowing. We have a BCS that it flails it up into a nice mulch. We then water it heavily and cover it with a silage tarp. The watering creates a ecosystem that helps breaks that down. Basically, we're composting in session. So in the summer, we can generally get that cover crop to break down in about 14 days and be ready to plant. Unless it's a fibrous type thing like the rye, that can take quite a bit longer. So we are selective on what we put in, depending on when we're going to plant again.
Very cool. What other recommendations do you have for farmers like yourself who might be considering cover cropping?
One of the biggest barriers that I had as a market gardener was my own self. I was my barrier. I kept trying to figure out what is the best solution. What do I need? And there's so much information out there. It can be overwhelming to get started. And so what I do is I try to break it up with 4 categories of cover cropping for a market gardener: good, better, and excellent. Of course, we want to strive for excellence, but that's the barrier that we tend to make ourselves fail at, because the timing and the termination and trying to get the rotation in becomes very difficult. So if we just take 2 steps back and say, let's just do good, that beats that 4th category. That 4th category is doing nothing. Doing nothing doesn't help. So if I even just put down simply in the summer between a couple of plantings, buckwheat. We love using buckwheat in summer. It's not fibrous. It breaks down fast. It germinates almost overnight. It grows in a couple of weeks. We can flail that down. If you don't have a flail mower, you can weed eat it, and it goes right back in the soil in a matter of minutes. And we can plant quickly. So that's a good solution. That's better than doing nothing. So once I started with the idea of, hey, even if I'm not meeting better or excellent, I'm doing good. So just get a rotation in, put something in, be good at it, try to be better. And from time to time, when you have that opportunity to take something out of rotation, put in a nice diverse mix, and you can hit that excellent and get great results. But don't let excellent get in the way of good or better. And that's the recommendation I have for people getting started with cover cropping.
I like that a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
I did too. In fact, I forgot we were talking about cover crops there for a second, Kevin. So I appreciate it.
It can be applied in everything in our life. Don't let the excellence get in the way of getting started with something. If I had used that when I started my farm, I would have never started the farm, and I'd still be trying to figure out how to get started. So sometimes you just got to do it.
I will say, being on your farm, Kevin, it sure feels like you're striving for excellent, though.
It didn't always look that good.
And you're doing a great job. I mean, it's
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Well, Ryan, what else did we miss in the conversation here?
Oh boy. No, I really appreciate from kind of the sky to the ground kind of perspective that we had. Obviously, we've been talking about this subject for a long time in agriculture, and it's nice to see it finally, kind of working its way into more a systemic conversation. It was kind of lost for a second. Nothing against the no-till associations and those that are really focused on that. They do amazing work in this space to help promote some cover cropping practices and things like that. But it is nice to see it getting involved in like all aspects of agriculture and really being introduced into even, we haven't even talked about HOAs and, institutions and things like that. But, that's a subject maybe for another day. But Keith, Kevin, I thought I'd maybe just give you a chance to ask each other questions or anything you guys wanted to ask while we got you together.
Well, I want to just make a comment on one of the things that Kevin said because I thought it was really good. Kevin, you said that, even if you can only get a cover crop in for 6 to 8 weeks, you're still doing it because you feel like it's still advantageous. And we get this question a lot from people of, how long do I have to let my cover crop grow to get that benefit out of it? And, as I started looking at it and thinking about it, our typical answer is 7 to 8 weeks. You're going to get you'll probably get 80+% of the benefits that you're going to get out of something in that time frame. And I started thinking about it because I also have a lot of people that, they go back to the Bible and, in there it says, you should let your land rest 1 out of every 7 years. And I think there's really good reasons for that. The Sabbath, Sunday, is day of rest, 1 day out of 7. Well, if you look at 1/7 of the year, that's 52 days, which is between 7 and 8 weeks. And I think there's a really good lesson in there that everybody does need a rest from time to time, and that 1 out of 7 seems to be just kind of a universal principle. And so, if you can get that 7 to 8 weeks, I think it's just right. But the other thing that people need to understand is the worst possible way for land to rest is to have nothing on it.
Right.
And that is a huge fallacy. The fallacy of fallow is just bare soil. That is not resting, that is starving. And so the only way your soil can really rest is when you have something growing on it that you are not going to harvest. And that's what a cover crop is. Something growing that you are not exporting. 100% of it's going right back in. That's rest for the land. 7 to 8 weeks, perfect.
Right. Yeah. And that what you just said is important. One of the 5 principles of regenerative farming is to never let the soil be bare. So that's kind of where I came up with is sometimes we would harvest something and we're not going to put a crop in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even 10 days. We still put something down and grow something to not leave it bare. There are even times on our 100-foot bed that we run short of plants and we only plant 90 feet. I've got 10 feet left over. We throw down some buckwheat seed and put it out there, and that acts as a pollinator crop, brings in bees and provides a little biological life to the soil. So even just simple things like that, just to keep the soil from degrading is in the right direction. So that was the principle of what we do. We'll put down a cover crop seed. If we're not putting another cash crop in, something is going down in the soil always. And I'm going to sound like a commercial for you. When I first started, one of the other challenges was when I was looking for seed, everything came in 50-pound bags. And for a small 1-acre farm, if I only needed to do a 2,000 square foot garden, that was expensive. That's where I found green cover seed, got online, and then they'd have everything I need in 5-pound or 10-pound increments. So I don't always need to buy 50-pound bags and pay the shipping for that. So this is a very affordable solution for the market gardener. It really is not that much money out of our pocket to purchase 20 pounds or 25 pounds of seed, get it here, have it in my toolkit. So on that day I say, I have nothing to plant, I just go to my toolkit. What do we have today? Toss some seed down, water it in, go to town.
That's me. Well, Keith, Kevin, and yet I have one thing about Keith's company is, and apologies to all the agronomists out there, but we all know you're just going to their website and using their calculator when you're working with the farmers, and it's a really useful tool. So if you need a cover crop calculator, and I think a lot of agronomists probably aren't even shy about telling their clients that it's useful. So without further ado, we hope this is useful for everybody. Keith, Berns, Kevin Marshall, Denise, Nicol, thank you so much for your time and your information and your passion for all we're talking about today. And hope you guys have a great rest of your year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.